Hello and welcome to the first part of a walkthrough of the appeal form required when you are appealing against the content of an EHC plan, i.e. Section B, Needs, Section F, Provision, and Section I, Placement. This type of appeal is also known as a contents appeal. There is also an option to appeal against Section I only, known as a placement only appeal. The general advice is that parents or carers and young people consider sections B and F also when faced with a placement only appeal, as these sections all follow on from and inform one another. Placement decisions are dictated by what is represented in sections B and F, so it is important that these sections are accurate in order to get the correct placement. This video will therefore provide a walkthrough of the appeal form for a contents appeal, so sections B, F and I. Before we start, if your appeal is against the decision not to conduct an EHC needs assessment, not to issue an EHC plan, or to cease to maintain an EHC plan, please see the video list on our YouTube channel for the relevant video appeal. This video will walk you through appealing the contents of an EHC plan. Before we get started, I will just explain what the CENDIAS role is in appeals and tribunals. As an impartial service, there is a limit to our role in appeals and tribunals. The table on this slide sets out some of the things we will do in supporting your appeal and some of the things that we will not. We will work to inform you of your legal rights and the appeal processes so that you feel empowered to understand and run your own appeal. At times, we will provide resources to support you in completing appeal process independently. These might be in the form of guidance documents, fact sheets, or webinars, just like this one. We will not complete any paperwork on your behalf, take sides, or run your appeal for you. We are not able to make any decisions for you, as you know your child best, and we will not be able to attend all meetings or final hearings. All of these points come with a caveat, of course, and we will always consider situations on a case-by-case basis. For example, if you have a learning difficulty or disability that prevents you from completing any processes independently, we will try to ensure to make the necessary reasonable adjustments to support you. We do, however, rely on you declaring any difficulties you may have early on when in contact with an advisor. Another point to consider before we get started on the appeal form is whether you've considered legal aid. Legal aid are another avenue of support that may be able to support you with preparing your case and include funding for additional evidence that can be obtained from independent reports. You may be eligible for this if you are on a lower income or receiving certain types of benefits. Legal help through legal aid does not cover representation in the final hearing, however. For more information on legal aid or to check your eligibility, please follow the link on this slide and there'll be a link in the video description below. So let's get started with the appeal form. Page 1 of the appeal form gives you key information about the appeal. You'll be able to see a screenshot of the first page here, but please do take the time to read this page in full on your own appeal form, as this is just a section of it. This page explains who can bring an appeal to the tribunal. The majority of the cases we might support involve children, i.e. under 16, whereby parents or carers submit appeals on their behalf. For young people aged 16 and over, it is presumed that a young person has mental capacity to bring the appeal themselves. This isn't always possible, therefore the young person can appoint an advocate to bring the appeal. This can be a parent, family member, or independent advocate. A representative can also be appointed to act on their behalf. Section 1 is relatively straightforward and is just asking you to fill out the details of your child or young person. When it comes to filling out your form, please take the time to read this page in full to ensure your understanding. Section 2 is important in ensuring that the tribunal have the correct information about the circumstances that led to the appeal. The first 6 options set out the scene i.e. what has happened recently within the context of the EHC plan that has led to the decision that you are appealing against. As you can see on the slide here, there are some reasons that have a red line through. These will not be discussed in this video. That leaves us with the following options to be discussed in this video related to a contents appeal only. So first, the local authority has issued an EHC plan following an EHC needs assessment. And second, the local authority has carried out an annual review of the EHC plan, meaning that your child or young person already had an EHC plan and this has recently been reviewed. The second part of this checklist refers to the bits of the EHC plan that you are disagreeing about. If you are appealing section I, placement only, you only need to tick this box. If you are appealing sections B, F and I, as this video will discuss, you will need to tick all three. Sometimes a plan can be issued without a school named in section I. This might be for various reasons, for example to meet timescales or because the local authority are awaiting confirmation of a specific placement but cannot name them at this time. Section I should not be left blank, despite these very real examples given. And if it is left blank, you can appeal against this for your preferred school to be named in section I. If your appeal includes section I, placement, you will need to provide the details of the setting you are appealing for, i.e. your preferred setting. If you are not appealing placement, you can leave this page blank. This page also asks for confirmation that the setting have been contacted regarding placement, the date on which this took place, and the response received. For approved settings that parents, carers and young people can request, and these will be discussed in the next slide, this includes the consultation process, i.e. when were the setting consulted with and what was the response. You may wish to include the response in full, be that in a formal decision letter or an email from the local authority, as evidence to reference in this section. You should also inform the setting that you will be naming in the appeal and include information on when you did so and their response. If your preferred school is a wholly independent school, and this will be discussed in more detail in the next few slides, you will need to confirm that you have been offered a place from the school and the school's response to you, including them in the appeal. At the bottom of this same page, there is also a box where you can indicate what type of school you would prefer to be named. This will be relevant for you if you do not yet have a preferred placement, but know what type of school you would prefer. For example, a mainstream setting versus a specialist setting. The final checkboxes on this page are for you to indicate whether you would like the tribunal to make recommendations on the health and social care elements of the EHC plan. You will have the opportunity to expand on this in section 4 of the form. Choosing a school with an EHC plan, parents, carers and young people have a list of types of schools that can be requested to be named. This legal right is contained within section 38(3) of the Children and Families Act 2014, which can be accessed in full online. This states that a parent or young person has a right to request any of the following: a maintained school or nursery, either mainstream or special, an academy, either mainstream or special, an institution in the further education sector, a non-maintained special school, or a Section 41 school. But what do these mean and how do they differ? So starting with a maintained school or nursery, this refers to any school or nursery controlled by the local authority. It also refers to both mainstream and specialist. Though it can be confusing, maintained is not the same as a mainstream setting. You can have a maintained specialist setting, i.e. a special school controlled by the local authority. An academy is controlled or funded by the Secretary of State. Further education institutions are post-16 or sixth form settings. Non-maintained special schools are special schools that are not controlled or funded by the local authority or Secretary of State. A Section 41 school is an independent special school which has been approved under Section 41 of the Children and Families Act 2014 as schools which parents or young people can request be named in a plan. You might hear this described as Section 41 approved or not approved. This makes a difference in terms of the appeal and will be discussed later in this video. These type of schools, therefore, can be requested to be named on the EHC plan and can be named on the appeal form if it is your preference. The LA can also refuse this request or dislodge your preference for the following reasons. First, the setting is unsuitable for the age, ability, aptitude, or SEN of the child or young person. Second, the attendance of the child or young person would be incompatible with the provision of efficient education for others. And finally, third, the attendance of the child or young person would be incompatible with the efficient use of resources. Under Section 43 of the Children and Families Act, these schools are also required to admit a pupil if they are named on the EHC plan. This means in an appeal, if the tribunal agreed to a setting on the plan and name it in Section I, the setting would have to admit the pupil. Similarly, if the local authority decide a setting is appropriate and name it in Section I, the setting would have to admit the pupil. These settings, therefore, can be named on an appeal form as the preferred setting without consent or offer for a place. So what about those settings that fall outside of this list? Most commonly, these are independent schools who are not Section 41 registered or approved. For these settings, a place must have been offered in order to name them on the appeal and for the tribunal to make a decision on it. This is because these settings do not have a duty to admit pupils, as with schools in the Section 38(3) list. If you have had a place offered from an independent, non-Section 41 approved school, you can name them on your appeal. It is worth mentioning that this changes how you will run your appeal, as with these settings, it becomes your responsibility to demonstrate why this independent setting is the only setting that can meet your child's needs. And also, more importantly, perhaps, why the local authority's preferred setting is not appropriate. That brings us to the end of our first video of the Contents Appeal Form walkthrough. Please join us for part 2, which will go through the reasons for appeal. Thank you for listening.